This is Jack Fishman behind the camera speaking with new music director Sebastian Langlessing about his debut with Mahler Symphony No. 1 on October 2nd. Tell us a little bit about Mahler 1, the different movements, and more about the composition.
Well, in a certain way, it's a classical symphony. It has a first movement that is not really in the sonata form, but you can discover it. It has a scherzo, it has a slow movement, and it has a big finale. So, in that respect, it's a very traditional symphony. But when it comes to the way the movements are composed and the way he approaches composition here, then it becomes something very radically new, because he uses something that I think no composer before used, and that is parody. And that becomes very, very significant in the centerpiece of the symphony, the third movement, where he uses Frère Jacques, a folk song that might be not so radical, but the way he uses it as a funeral march that is turned upside down, that is something very radical. He really uses parody and irony and in a way that music hasn't been treated in that way at all before. It was not appropriate to do it, and I think it was a huge shock for the audience at the time to use music that way. And he writes it actually. He melts together, folk song, funeral march, klezmer, and all together to one big movement that gives us the idea of the funeral march in Beethoven's Eroica, but has a complete different approach. And you can really feel this is a 24-year-old starting composition and starting something completely new, really trying to break with tradition by respecting traditional forms.
And is his orchestration traditional, or does his use of the orchestra innovative also?
The use of the orchestra is completely innovative. It's something, for example, the best example is also, let's stay with the third movement, the solo of a double bass that never happened before, and especially not in that way, and also to make it almost impossible is something that is so innovative and new. Usually composers try to set the instrument in the best possible way, in the best register that is very typical for the instrument. Mahler does sometimes the opposite. He uses the double bass in a complete new approach that is actually stretching the limits of the instrument. He does it with all wind instruments. He uses the trumpets to sing and melody for melody. He uses also the mixture of instruments is quite new. So we have new approaches of colors, sometimes very dividing. So we hear harsh clashes, and sometimes really melting instruments together. I think he tries to really cut loose from the tradition by, as I said, by really knowing what he was doing. He comes out of this Viennese tradition, but there were also a lot of things he needs to treat with irony, because he knows there is no further way you can go after. Well, Bruckner would be the last one for him, the biggest example and the biggest symphonic composer. So he needed to go to a complete different way, and again, Mahler 1 is a first step into a complete new universe of symphonic writing.
Can't wait to hear it on October 2nd as you make your debut as music director of the San Antonio Symphony.